The bombing of the Jedi Temple was extremely significant. Had it happened in any other period of galactic history, it would have been one of the major events of that period. But since the Clone Wars increased the amount of chaos and turmoil on the land, the Jedi Temple bombing was kind of an overlooked event that was squeezed right in between Senate assassinations, Tay-Tay's Eras tour, and the beginning of the Outer Rim sieges. When so many bad things happen in such a small period of time, it's hard to give each one of those events its due time and reflection. But this was important. You know, the Jedi Temple was the most visible symbol of the Order, and while some organizations might not depend on image and public perception as much, the Jedi were all about that. For them to maintain their role in the Republic as holy warriors and guardians of the peace, they needed the trust of the civilian populace, the moral high ground. After all, there were hardly any other checks and balances holding their power back. It was a flawed system that encouraged the Jedi to abuse their power in many ways. And the last time the Jedi Temple was attacked and sacked, well, that marked the beginning of a very rough period in galactic history, where the Jedi would play a smaller role in galactic affairs and the Sith Empire would take over a considerable amount of Republic space and hold on to it. The point is, while the Jedi were not perfect, they were a beacon of hope, inspiration, and morality for the general public. And for any cohesive society to function, you need shared values, like the ones the Jedi defended. This is what really keeps the peace. Now, originally it was believed that Ahsoka Tano was the culprit of this attack, a very surprising and damaging revelation for the Jedi. It would have been one thing if an outside actor had attacked the Jedi Temple, like the Separatists. Heck, you can even rally the troops around the Jedi Temple, maybe sell some war bonds or something, take advantage of a crisis. But since this was an internal issue, it created many different problems. First of all, most people probably didn't realize that Jedi could go rogue and turn to the dark side. For some people, it was as strange as the idea of Santa Claus coming to your house and stealing your children instead of leaving gifts. But of course, Santa Claus doesn't do that, the Jedi do that. I think had more people understood the dangerous nature of your average Force user, they wouldn't have just given this organization free reign to do whatever they wanted. And so it would have been shocking to see Ahsoka Tano, a war hero, the Padawan of Anakin Skywalker, an even bigger war hero, be responsible for this attack at the heart of the Republic. And here's the thing, those same generalizations that Republic citizens made about how trustworthy the Jedi were, that gave the Jedi their power, could be taken away from them. People could start fearing the Jedi and see them all as terrorists. If you're a small group of people who has an outsized impact on the wider galaxy, you're not going to be able to meet a lot of people in person. And so a lot of people will judge you through generalizations and stereotypes. And this is really how public perception of the Jedi was shaped. Most people had never seen one. And many years later, when Imperial Special Forces operator Del Meeko runs into Luke Skywalker, he admits the following.
I've heard 100 stories about the Jedi. They terrified me as a boy on Coruscant, but you...
You see, this was always Palpatine's plan, destroy the image of the Jedi. And it was really as simple as putting these Force users in unwinnable situations time and time again on the battlefields of the Clone Wars. The rules of warfare are completely different from civilian life, and they're definitely completely different from the Jedi Code. Many of the Jedi who entered the battlefield found themselves unprepared not only physically and mentally, but also spiritually. It was not natural for a Jedi to think offensively and plot the death of others. They were supposed to be defending lives. And for some Jedi, like a Padawan named Bariss Offee, this hypocrisy of the Jedi was just way too much to bear. I mean, she had to do something. As one of the top younglings of her class, Bariss Offee, a Miralan, would be placed under the tutelage of another Miralan, Jedi Master Luminara Unduli. This was kind of the tradition of the Jedi Order. Mirialans stick together. In a lot of ways, Bariss Offee was seen as the perfect Padawan, especially in times of peace. She was capable, disciplined, and respectful towards her master. And so it was kind of shocking when it was revealed that it was actually Bariss Offee who had framed Ahsoka Tano and organized the entire temple bombing. No, seriously, Bariss Offee would have been the last suspect on my list. I could think of 20 other Jedi or, just other bad actors that weren't Jedi who could be responsible for this. But Bariss Offee was always seen as a very, disciplined, kind of bookish Jedi who followed all the orders to the T.
Well, Bariss, aren't you going to introduce yourself?
Padawan learner, Bariss Offee, at your service.
Her own master had a huge impact on her. Remember, the relationship between a Padawan and a master is like that of a child and a parent. And I mean because it's not really the same. I mean, there's no biological connection, no unconditional love, although some of the better masters did try to create such connections like that. But ultimately, a parent has no choice but to be there for their child, unless they're Darth Vader. A youngling, on the other hand, must be selected by their master. They must seek their master's approval and attention, and that really changes the dynamic a lot. Especially because not all younglings become Padawans. Many who aren't chosen join the service corps, which really is not as exciting or prestigious, which is why we don't get to see them in all of the propaganda films about the Jedi. And so when Master Luminara told Bariss Offee to do something, she generally listened. I mean, she was very appreciative of her position most Padawans would have been. When preparing to assault the weapons factory on Geonosis, Master Luminara suggests that the two Padawans in the team launch a covert insertion through the tunnels beneath the base, while the Masters carry out a diversionary attack above ground.
Well, looks like a good way to get lost, if you ask me.
For the unprepared, perhaps, but I have instructed Bariss to memorize the labyrinth, all 200 junctions.
At this point, Bariss Offee is still relatively young and inexperienced. She had been pushed into her first battle on this very planet just months earlier. She had been a part of the initial group of Jedi who assaulted Petronaki Arena. Out of the 215 Jedi who went, only 20 survived, including Bariss Offee and her master. Now, Bariss watched many more experienced Jedi Knights and Masters fall right in front of her, and I'm guessing the only reason that she and her master survived is not necessarily because of their skill, but because they're both practitioners of Form 3, a defensive shell technique that is perfect for blocking blaster bolts fired at you from every direction. This was Bariss Offee's first large battlefield experience. It's probably most Jedi's first large battlefield experience, and when she returned from this battle, she had trouble sleeping. I mean, she had some signs of trauma. And when she couldn't sleep, she would find solace not by talking to her master, but by going to the medical wing in the Jedi Temple and helping the wounded. In Legends, Bariss Offee was really well known as a healer. The troops used to love her because she would really go out of her way to help people. Jedi Master Deepa Billaba would later remark that many of the patients that Bariss took care of were able to recover fully. And so what we have here is a super sweet and sensitive, empathetic child. And that makes sense because most Padawans, including Bariss, were just innocent teenagers, extremely young and naive. And she was terrified and shocked. She had survived Geonosis. She had never seen anything like this, and so she attributed her survival not to her own abilities and skills, which were, pretty good. No, instead she attributes her survival to Master Luminara's teachings. Teachings that she would follow to the T.
It pays for one to be prepared, right, Bariss?
Especially when other people's lives depend on your success.
There's a reason why we try our best as a society to protect children from dangerous environments. We don't just send them off to war like, African warlords or the Jedi Order. And that's because children have not really fully matured. They don't even really understand who they are and what they're capable of and what they can handle. And that's also what makes child soldiers so enticing to warlords and the Jedi Temple. Most children, when entering a scary or unknown situation, are open to suggestion from adults. The fear can make them more pliable. Now, normally, with children, you have parents and guardians in these positions of care, but a Jedi Master like Luminara Unduli is not a parent. She's a Jedi extremist first and a military leader second. Her loyalty is to the mission. It's not even to herself, definitely not to her troops, and it's not really to her Padawan either. And the reality is this plan she has hatched here on Geonosis puts the two least experienced and capable individuals in the most dangerous and difficult position during the mission, whereas the two Jedi Masters are in charge of the less difficult attack vector. And when things ultimately go sideways, the two Padawan are trapped inside of the weapon factory and are forced to heroically bring it down on top of them, what happens?
Ahsoka. Ahsoka, can you hear me? Come in.
Anakin jumps right into action, but Master Luminara.
Master Luminara, don't worry.
Be at ease, Skywalker.
At ease. We need to act now. Ahsoka and Bariss may still be alive down there.
There's not enough time.
She immediately gives up on her apprentice. It's almost as if she started grieving already. And as time passes, you get a sense that Anakin is disgusted with her, which forces her to explain herself.
I too care for my apprentice. But if their time has come...
Yeah, more like I care about my apprentice, but I don't want to get my robes dirty digging through this pile of rubble. So I'm just gonna pretend like this is not me being a bit of a psychopath, but more about you being too emotional, Anakin, and being un-Jedi-like. That's called gaslighting. It's gaslighting 101 right there. And it's stuff like this that really made me not feel bad at all when Master Luminara Unduli turns up in an Imperial prison as a skeleton later on in Rebels. And so yeah, this individual here, this is Bariss Offee's master, unfortunately. This is an arrogant woman who once refused the help of Ahsoka Tano when facing Asajj Ventress because she thought the Jedi were so much more powerful than the dark side, and she almost gets killed as a result. It was Luminara who sent Bariss on this suicide mission to this stupid termite hill in the first place, and all she can do when everyone else is searching through the wreckage is repeat empty Jedi platitudes. It's no surprise that Master Luminara never really paid close enough attention to really understand Bariss Offee, and she also missed all of the red flags that there was something clearly wrong with her Padawan. You know, in her role as a healer in the Jedi Temple, Bariss Offee was oftentimes exposed to the minds of gravely wounded and injured individuals. We talked a lot about trauma in one of our last videos, and the truth is trauma affects everyone. I don't care how powerful you are, I don't care if you're the chosen one, I don't care if you were leaking midichlorians out of your ass, trauma can affect everyone. And Bariss Offee connected herself with numerous Jedi suffering from horrible dark side visions induced by fear, hatred, pain, and anger. There's no way she wasn't moved or affected by what she saw. Remember, Bariss Offee is not dumb, she's just really young and out of her depth. This is why she listens to everything that Master Luminara says. Doesn't mean that she can't form her own opinions. And it's one thing to have adrenaline coursing through your body on the battlefield. It's another thing to sit in a quiet room with the aftermath of that battlefield. Bariss would sit for hours with injured clones and Jedi, absorbing all of that pain. And she would probably reflect on that quite a lot. And because of the nature of her relationship with this cold and unfeeling master, I think Bariss Offee kept what she felt to herself. All that grief, all the pain, she had no outlet for it. She had no one to talk to, and that could be devastating for a young person. Now, shortly after the events at the Geonosian weapons factory, Bariss Offee and Ahsoka Tano would be aboard a medical frigate, which would be overtaken by parasitic Geonosian worms. This is a pretty crazy situation, and Bariss Offee gets infected and proceeds to try and kill her friend Ahsoka. Now, during this incident, Bariss Offee has like a moment of clarity where she regains control of herself and she says this.
Kill me, please.
Now, Bariss Offee's previous attempt to kill herself while in the weapons factory was driven by duty and just the general sense of urgency, I guess, with enemy forces approaching from all directions. This plea for death was a very different one. It could be from pain and suffering that the brain parasite is causing, but I actually think it's something else. I think she, the real Bariss, is still somewhat conscious and visually seeing that she's attacking her friend and is a danger to everyone. She's probably also thinking to herself, what if this pathogen escapes off of this ship and infects more people? This is a selfless request, and it says a lot about who Bariss Offee is.
Kill me, please.
While Ahsoka and Luminara are recovering, Anakin comes to visit her apprentice, and Master Luminara does not, which is not surprising at all. And Anakin has this important talk about what Ahsoka did.
On the ship, Bariss was gone, and she wanted me to kill her. She told me...
But you couldn't do it.
No.
You can take a look at ethics from a more academic point of view. Take a look at scenarios, really go through the thought process, the philosophical questions of what is right or wrong. And oftentimes you have to remove the emotion and personal connection from these situations to get like a proper answer, I guess, if you can call it that. Some like the Jedi might take it to an extreme, this idea of ethics, and even try to suppress their emotions and feelings in order to more clearly see the larger picture. The problem with the larger picture is oftentimes you miss the little people that are also involved in the larger picture, the individuals who oftentimes suffer the most from the decisions being made. Master Luminara probably would have been proud if Bariss had offed herself on the ship because she is just one person in the greater scheme of things. But Ahsoka and Anakin, they let their emotions speak for them as well. They believe that every life is important. Ethics for them was not just some glorified thought exercise. It affected real people that they cared about on a daily basis, who weren't just statistics or numbers on a screen. It takes great courage and probably a bit of foolishness to try and save everyone, but it still should be lauded. Living creatures, we have emotions for a reason. They're catalysts. They push us into action. They can help us achieve greatness, or at times, they could also lead us down a fiery road to Mustafar and third-degree burns all over our body, if we're not careful. But because both Anakin and Ahsoka are honest and have healthy discussions about their emotions and accept that it's just a part of being alive, they're able to support each other and help each other understand their own emotions, as a Padawan and a Master should, as two friends who care about each other should. This is why Bariss Offee's attempt to frame Ahsoka hurts Anakin more than anyone. Had his Padawan still been by his side at the end of the war, maybe she could have stopped him from turning to Darth Vader. We all need friends. We all need people who we can trust to bounce off our ideas, to keep us in check when we kind of lose our shit. every now and then. Bariss just had Master Luminara and Dooley, and from day one her master didn't really understand that she was a healer, not a soldier, and didn't belong on the battlefield. Of course, duty comes first for someone like Luminara. The fact that Bariss Offee would even question this was ridiculous, and so she would arrogantly march ahead thinking that she had a perfect Padawan by herself, when in reality Bariss Offee was always in turmoil. She was hurting on the inside. As a matter of fact, maybe her telling Ahsoka to kill her was just her trying to actually end it all. It's clear that she hated violence, yet she was constantly absorbing negativity, violence, death. Sending a sensitive and empathetic person into a battlefield on a daily basis is really just an untenable and cruel situation. Now, sometimes when people act out, it's not because they want to, they have no choice but to do it. And that's what happens when a pacifist is forced to fight on the front lines of a horrible war that they don't understand. Now, at her trial, Bariss Offee is a bit older than the last time we saw her. She confesses to framing Ahsoka, but also explains why she did it.
I have come to realize what many people in the Republic have come to realize. That the Jedi are the ones responsible for this war. That we've so lost our way that we have become villains in this conflict.
What surprises me is just how different Bariss Offee comes off here. She's far more confident and assertive than when we see her with Luminara. It's almost as if her experience in the last few years have changed her and hardened her. She finally realizes that the death and destruction she witnessed had been pointless, that her own master Luminara was a hypocrite and seemed to care very little for her. The fact that she could pin the blame on Ahsoka Tano shows that she's completely ready to cut ties with the only Jedi who actually had close relations to her. But her ultimate goal was not destroying the Jedi, but ending the Clone Wars and all of the violence. I think Bariss Offee watched in horror as Order 66 brought down the Jedi Order and Emperor Palpatine took over the galaxy. She might even have regrets now over the Jedi Temple bombing because it greatly hurt the Order's standing. As bad as the Jedi Order was, she didn't want all of her colleagues and friends to die. Now, obviously, the Empire has a very different view on her. They believe she hates the Jedi still and begins to train her as an Inquisitor. I think Bariss Offee has no desire to hunt down Force Sensitive, but this does provide her with a great opportunity to escape. What she didn't realize was that she was playing right into Palpatine's hands, like everyone else was. I hope in the Tales of the Jedi we get to see a very different Bariss Offee, maybe one that's a bit more reserved, more mature. Maybe she has to hide her true intent from the other Inquisitors, definitely from Darth Vader, who might even recognize her. I mean, maybe she'll recognize him as well. But anyway, I am very much looking forward to this series. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on all of our coverage of it. And as usual, thank you for joining us. My name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.